Good day everyone, my name is Alex and welcome back. For today we have a new device from BLU called the R1 Plus, and the main selling points for this phone are the price, because you can buy this phone for around $150, and the fact that you can buy it in the US and it actually works on 4G for some US carriers. Now before we go any further, can you help me out by pressing that like button and subscribing if you haven't done so? For specs, we have the MediaTek 6737 CPU. This is a quad-core CPU clocked at 1.3 GHz. We also have 3 GB of RAM, 32 GB of internal storage, and the phone is running Android 6. The phone's build quality is not bad, but is not spectacular either. So most of the back it's made out of metal, but we have plastic on the sides, the top and the bottom, and that makes the phone squeaky every now and then. On the front we have a 5.5-inch screen with a 720p resolution. Now because we have a large screen, the phone is also rather large, but not as big as other phones that we've seen from China in the past, but still a bit too big to actually use this phone in one hand. On the back of the phone we have a 13-megapixel camera, the secondary microphone, the flash, the blue logo, and all the way at the bottom we have the speaker. Now the speaker seems to get quite loud, but keep in mind that the speaker is pointed away from you and it's actually very easy to cover the speaker whenever you're holding the phone. But here is a quick sample of how the speaker sounds. The back cover is also removable, however it's not easy to actually remove the back cover. So behind that back cover we have a 4000 mAh non-removable battery, we have a slot for an SD card and 2 slots for 2 SIM cards. Since this phone is running Android 6, you can easily install that SD card as internal storage. And speaking about the internal storage, out of that 32 GB of internal storage that comes with the device, we have about 25 left, but the speeds that I got for the internal storage are very good. As for that 4000 mAh battery that we have inside this phone, well, you're gonna be able to make it run an entire day easily and get about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time. Of course, this will depend from user to user and how you actually use your phone. And moving back to the phone's body, so on the right hand side you're gonna find the power button and the volume keys. These ones seem to be made out of plastic and they're not very clicky. On top we have the 3.5mm audio jack, and the sound coming out of that audio jack, it's just average, so nothing spectacular. And moving all the way at the bottom of the phone, there we have a micro USB charging port and a microphone. This phone also supports OTG, and that means that you'll be able to plug in any USB stick and the phone will be able to read that. As for charging the device, well, it takes about 3 hours to fully charge the phone from 0 to 100. Now moving to the front of the phone and starting at the top, there we have a 5-megapixel front-facing camera, we have an LED notification light, we also have the speaker, a couple of sensors and a flash. The front-facing camera takes decent enough pictures when you have plenty of light, but as soon as you don't have enough light, the pictures become grainy and out of focus. But of course we have that flash there, so it can help. And the pictures that you've just seen are taken with the front-facing camera of this phone. The 5.5-inch screen used for this phone is an IPS panel that has a resolution of 720p. And now for a 5.5-inch screen at 720p resolution, well, it's not the absolute best. The colors are nice and vibrant, the viewing angles are great, so you can see the phone no matter how you look at it, but the screen doesn't seem to get that bright, so whenever you're gonna go outside and it's gonna be sunny, you're gonna have trouble seeing the screen. Now, my biggest complaint about this phone is the screen sensitivity. So the screen can register up to 5 touches in the same time. However, if your fingers are close enough to each other, the screen is not going to register them. And that means that you're going to have some problems playing some games or using some apps. One of those apps would be Google Maps, so you cannot really zoom in or zoom out, and that becomes kind of annoying. And thanks to Scott for pointing that out. But for typing or anything like that, the screen seems to work good, and hopefully this can be fixed in a software update in the future. And lastly, the screen is also covered by some type of scratch resistant glass, and of course I tried scratching it and it doesn't seem to get scratched that easily. All the way at the bottom of the screen you're also gonna find the soft key. Unfortunately there is no way of actually moving those around. Performance-wise, well, that MediaTek 6737 CPU, it's a rather slow CPU, and of course the scores that I got on the Antutu Benchmark and the Geekbench 4 are also very low. Even with those low scores, I haven't had any issues whenever I used Chrome, so zooming in, zooming out, scrolling up, scrolling down, watching videos in the browser, everything seems to work just as good as it would work on a phone that costs 3 times as much. On the YouTube app, the maximum resolution is 720p, and this is basically the maximum resolution of the screen. I watched a few videos at 720p and all the videos that I watched seem to go quite smooth. As for gaming, well, the phone performed much better than I was expecting, so I was able to play Need for Speed No Limits, and as you can probably tell for yourself, the game does go very smooth without any issues. Now keep in mind that this phone is not a powerhouse, so some games are not gonna go as good. The GPS unit inside the R1 Plus performs much better than I was expecting, so it only takes a couple of seconds to connect to the satellites and it doesn't seem to get disconnected that easily. As for sensors, we do have a lot of sensors available, including a gyroscope, and that's not something that we see for a lot of cheap devices. And we are moving to connectivity, so this phone supports 4G connectivity, and this also works for some carriers in the US. The call quality is great, the speaker on top here, it's not the loudest, but it's good enough for a phone that costs only about $150. Now, the phone doesn't support dual band Wi-Fi, so you're only going to be able to connect to the 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi bands, but the speeds that I got over Wi-Fi and over the 4G networks are decent. As I mentioned earlier, on the back of the phone we have a 13 megapixel camera. Now the camera app looks better than a lot of cheaper devices that we've seen from China with the MediaTek 6737 CPU, and it kind of reminds me of the camera app that you'd find on an iPhone. We also have lots of options in settings in the camera app there, but one thing I've noticed is the maximum recording resolution for the rear camera, and that is 720p. However, I've actually seen on the manufacturer's website that the maximum resolution for recording video is 1080p at 30 frames per second, so hopefully this will also be fixed in a software update in the future. Aside from that, we have an HDR mode, we even have a Pro mode, so if you're into taking pictures with long exposure or anything like that, it's gonna be helpful for you. The camera app is also quick 95% of the time. However, if you don't take your time whenever you take pictures, some of the pictures turn out a bit blurry. Of course, the pictures that you're watching right now are all taken with the R1 Plus. So, like any other cheaper device, if you have a lot of light, the pictures turn out great, a lot of detail in them, and the colors are nice and vibrant. But as soon as you don't have enough light, the pictures become blurry and grainy and a bit out of focus. So always take your time whenever you take pictures in low light conditions. And we are moving to the operating system. So this phone is running Android 6, but supposedly it will get Android 7 in the near future, but who knows how long that will take. The UI is very clean and very close to stock Android. That makes the phone very quick and almost without any lag, so scrolling between screens, opening new apps, closing apps or anything like that works without any issues. Even multitasking works very good because we have 3 gigs of RAM, so most of the apps that you have running in the background will stay running in the background. So overall the UI it's great, the phone is very quick, and I wish more manufacturers would actually do this instead of putting their own skins on their devices. As for the settings app, well, it's very simple and it looks very close to stock Android, but that means that you're not gonna have any extra features or options in there. And it's time to conclude this video. So if you're looking for an affordable device and you don't have crazy expectations, the R1 Plus could be it. I mean, we get a 4000 mAh battery that will keep the phone going for a day and a half, depending on the user. And you can actually buy this in the US. So if you have any warranty issues, you can just send it back and get it fixed. So that's a big plus. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, press that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.